Please let's welcome Evelyn van Kelle and Chris Barron from Zebia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we really enjoyed the last talk. So, it was all in Greek. So, we actually heard 2 times the word sex. So,
yeah.
probably it was a fun talk. My name is Chris, and we're going to start off with maybe a peculiar topic in IT, but I'm used to it. So I work in IT for 15 years, so I'm used to it to talk about it, and I know it's a little bit strange, but hey, bear with us. We have some nice things to say, I think. So let's see if this thing works.
It does.
So they said me I had to be close to the laptop, so I'll move around a little bit. First, I would like to say something about my background, and it's a little bit different, but it leads to something, so bear with me. So when I was 19 years old, I started working at a school with kids with special needs. I learned a lot of things about autism, ADHD, PDD-NOS, and it was all about behavioral problems. And I started to specialize in behavioral problems, and I started working at a crisis unit for mostly boys or adolescents with severe mental issues, also resulting in problem behavior. It was a very aggressive set of boys, guys, sometimes a girl. So danger was always on the background. I started to specialize in behavioral problems and try to influence and see how we can make that person throughout the day without escalating, without showing that aggressive behavior, which was a challenge. And I remember one situation, and let's call this a fellow Robert, which is not his real name, but I made it up, but I have him in my mind. So I have him in my mind almost every day because he taught me valuable lessons about behavior. And Robert was an autistic man. He was, I think, 30 years old. And at one time a day, suddenly, out of nowhere, when he was in his room alone, he would start banging his head through the concrete wall. Hard. So you can imagine that was very dangerous for him, for his fellow clients, but also for us. Because Robert was autistic and didn't like to be touched. So when we touched Robert, to help him, of course, stop banging his head, he would get violent towards us. So we need to pick him up, restrain him, send him to the isolation room, where he would calm down. He would laugh, actually. And that was strange for us. So when we were thinking, hey, how is this behavior, where is this behavior coming from? Out of nowhere. So hours went by, days went by, weeks went by, and then still doing this with severe medical issues at his part. And it really grasped me and it really hit me. And after a couple of weeks, I started noticing a pattern. Every other day, at roughly the same time, a pack of sheep would be let loose in the grassland behind our unit. And that sound of sheep letting loose drove Robert mad. And probably he wanted to make that sound stop by banging his head around the concrete wall. So when we removed Robert from that situation, the behavior stopped immediately. And you can imagine, I was very happy for him, also for us. And Robert teaches me a couple of things. And we're going to talk about those things and more, and try to see if we can make the link into IT transformation. Sounds a little bit silly, but bear with us. So, what Robert really taught me was that it was not about me. if in order to change this situation, I really need to shift my focus towards him. How would he perceive the world? Which is very hard to do if someone is severe autistic, believe me. So I really needed to think about, hey, this is not about me, this is about him. And at the same time, it was all about me, because I needed to change my focus. I needed to do something different. He was not able to. I needed to. And it's this principle that we're going to dive deep in today and add a little bit things more to the complexity of behavioral change.
Yes. So complexity is everywhere, as we heard in Chris's story. And we are both in IT now, and the complex pretty much remains the same, right? So the complexity remains the same. Something always needs to change in the transformation projects that we're in, and specifically people need to change. And that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. And what also remains the same is that we're not changing people, but we are changing the environment of people. And that's going to be one of the focuses in this talk today. So, yes. So, I need to be very close to the mic. Right. So, now we know why Chris is here, what he has got to do with behavioral change. If you're wondering why I'm here, my background is more in the cognitive psychology. So, I studied humans. I studied their cognitive processes, how they learn, how they process information, how they make decisions, and all that sort of stuff. And there's a link with behavioral change there, as you can imagine, and I will illustrate that in a bit. What we do a lot in IT, in transformations, we put a lot of people together in a room, and then we expect them to come up with something, a result, an outcome, progress, or at least with something. And we also expect them to do that in some sort of harmony. And that's pretty weird when you think about it, because there are lots of different cognitive processes going on, lots of sociodynamics flying around, and we still expect them to do something. And knowing how they work and how they influence behavior, that's a very valuable skill in these sessions, and especially from my experience, when you facilitate sessions. So I also facilitate collaborative modeling sessions like event storming. There was a workshop just yet. I hope you enjoyed it. And in these situations, we also put these people together in a room and we expect them to do something. So I remember one event storming session that I facilitated. It was at a client, and it wasn't a very safe space. People were not particularly willing to share things or disagree with management. And we also invited the CTO. And the CTO was way too busy, so he couldn't attend the full day. But he was hopping in and out of the session. And at the end of the day, we finally got the group to open up a bit. And the CTO hopped in, and there was someone sharing a minority perspective, being vulnerable, which was very brave at that point. And CTO was standing there, and he started to, when this person said something. And you can imagine what that does with a group. It also did something to me, but that was less important in that case. But there was a very clear link between these cognitive processes and the behavior in that situation. And understanding that is very crucial. So Chris and I are finding ourselves in situations like that all the time. And we're going to dive into that today. We're going to dive into how we are adding complexity to it. We all do that. How behavioral science is related to it, and how we can apply that behavioral science to some of the challenges that we see. So in order to do that, we want to welcome you in our theater of complexity. We are in Greece, so we wanted to play with that analogy a bit. And I'm glad you like it. And we will take agile transformations as our theater, a theater of complexity. And what we will do, first thing to do in a theater, introduce you to the actors of our play. And we're going to discuss 4 actors here: leadership, the agile mindset, resistance, and changing roles and changing organizational designs. And what we will first do, we will dive into how we are adding complexity on all of these topics. And Chris will start with the first one, which is leadership.
Yes, indeed. So fast forwarding my career after, I don't want to say it, but almost 20 years, I had a lot to do with leadership. So I coach and I advise leadership on this topic. And I saw a lot of new styles popping up in the last couple of years. And let me see if you also have that same experience, because we keep adding new leadership styles, right? So in Agile transformation, we need new leadership styles.
Yes.
So, Agile leadership, anyone? No one. No agile leadership in Greece? Okay. Transformational leadership, maybe? Yeah. My personal favorite, servant leadership. Is that a thing here in Greece? Okay, more heads. Okay. It's same in Holland. That's where we come from. Servant leadership is the hot thing at the moment. But what does it actually mean? What does servant leadership mean? We kind of know what it means, right? Yes, I see a hand, right. Making sure you're there for a team, yeah? For your team, yeah? To achieve their goals. Okay, well, that's a nice definition. Any other definition of servant leadership? To serve, not to be served. Okay, well, that's another nice one. From behavioral science perspective, and that's what I wanted to teach you today, we talk about behavior. And the things that you start noticing is that we're not really good in talk about behavior. So we use a lot of words which are not behavior. I will teach you that. But we kind of know what it means, but we're not really sure, right? So now we have 2 people raising their hand, saying different things, and I would bet, well, how many people are in there? 300 or something? I don't know. I'm really bad at guessing. But I would bet if I asked 300 people what servant leadership is, I would get 400 answers, different answers. So we see things like this. So servant leaders, I'm going to take that one because that's what's the most popular here. Servant leaders need to connect more with their teams or people. Servant leaders need to engage and empower people. Recognizable for someone? Yeah? They need to be more vulnerable. They need to enable change, of course. At least we're agile, so we need to adapt to changing situations. So we use these words, but they mean different things. Yeah? And we're going to teach you how to do that. So try and see for yourself. Later on, maybe ask me or ask someone else during the coffee break, or maybe tomorrow in your team. Try to ask yourself, hey, what does it mean? What leaders should do to empower their people? And my guess, 2 things will happen. The first one we just started already noticing is that people will say different things. So these words will mean different things for different people, which is logic, right? And the second thing that you will notice, especially after this talk, is that people are not that good in describing behavior. So if you start noticing that, maybe it's interesting to play around with that. So that's leadership. It all builds up to complexity if we don't really know what is meant by it. Then we try to, that's the message here, we try to oversimplify leadership because it's complex. We, as human beings, and that's at least my experience, we try to oversimplify it by using words that we think we know we mean something. So oversimplifying leadership, I think that's something that we really need to dive deep into, where we should actually unravel that complexity. Because we can, using behavioral science. So, this one. Says anything? Agile mindset. So during an agile transformation, we need an agile mindset, right? So the same thing applies here with leadership. What does it actually mean? But it is more on this, I think, at least from my perspective. Because what is a mindset? Anyone? Maybe, what is a mindset? No?
No one dares anymore after you.
No. Okay. For me, a mindset, I'll take it literally. So a mindset, that is what's happened in people's mind, right? So this equation here is what we often do. We think when having an agile mindset, whatever that may be, by the way, you saw that on the leadership example, having a mindset is not enough. We have to link it to behavior. So what does these things in our minds actually we would like to trigger them new behaviors. So having an agile mindset is not enough, we need to go deeper. Yeah? So we try to oversimplify this structure of a mindset, thinking it's enough. We're going to show you some other things that you can do with it. We really need to stand close, right?
Yeah, very
All
close.
right.
So our next actor, resistance, and we all love resistance, probably. This is one of our least favorite characters of our play. So, question, raise your hand if you ever experienced or witnessed resistance in a transformation project. And I'm going for the easy win. That's what I do. Yes. So the thing with resistance is that it's a huge container concept. I mean, we can fit a lot into this bulk concept. Resistance is just a huge thing, and we can put a lot of behaviors in it. And we all have a sense. We can sense resistance, right? We can see something, and we interpret some behaviors as, this person is resisting to a tool, a process, a change, a transformation, a whatever. But we can sense resistance. But the thing with resistance is that it's also a very complex thing. Because when you really think about resistance in transformation projects, and in general, what does it really mean, right? What do you see people do, or what do you hear people say when they are showing resistant behavior? And that's a much harder question to ask and to answer as well. So what are you observing? What are you observing in a non-judgmental or in a more abstract way that you classify as resistant, that you put in that container concept? And then as a leader, this is also not your favorite character of the play, of the Agile transformation. But what are you going to do with it as a leader? Are you going to take it seriously? Are you going to waltz right over? Are you going to ignore it, which is very often the most practical and efficient thing to do? Or are you going to downgrade it? And that's what we see happening a lot when it comes to resistance. So again, we are oversimplifying it. We are putting a lot of concepts, a lot of behaviors, a lot of things that we're seeing and sensing into this container of resistance. And we say, yeah, we need to do something with resistance. Maybe we need a workforce, or we just get mad and angry because no one seems to get very motivated or engaged or committed enough to this transformation that we want to achieve. And then resistance is just there. So again, we're oversimplifying, where we should really unravel it. Where is it coming from? Why is it there? What are the behaviors that we're seeing? And that's a very hard thing to do, especially when it comes to resistance. And then we come to our last starring actor, which is about changing roles and changing organizational designs. And this is something that happens in almost every transformation, right? A transformation requires a new organizational chart, a new organizational design, and from now on, you're the product owner. It happens. And that implies quite a lot, right? If you are a product owner from one day to another, then it implies something for you. So what does it mean? What does a product owner even do, actually? What are the products that are there in the company? Is there any agreement on it? And what does it mean for your current activities, your current goals, your current dependencies? What is expected from you? What are the results that you need to achieve? And what are the behaviors that people would like to see you perform? So chaos can start here if you are a newly appointed product owner. Actually, yes. We've seen quite some newly appointed product owners that struggle and almost drown because their onboarding didn't go much further than a new position in the organizational chart and a 2-day certification course. Certification does not make you a product owner. If someone disagrees with me, I would be very happy to discuss that. But this happens. And what you see here is very often it's not specified up front. What are the results that we're expecting? What are the behaviors that we're expecting? What does it mean for your current position in the organization? What does it mean for your team? All these things need to be specified up front, and it's way harder than it seems, because results are very hard to specify, and so is behavior. So these are just a few things that you need to specify up front. Again, oversimplifying this topic where we should be really unraveling it. So I hope you're getting the message that we try to send here. For the record, this is not us. We might come across that way, there might be some similarities, but this is not us. We are not saying that all of this is wrong. We are not saying that you shouldn't care about a leadership style, that you shouldn't care about the agile mindset, that you shouldn't address resistance, and that you shouldn't change your organizational design, right? Sometimes that's required. What we're saying is that we think that something is missing, that we are still oversimplifying all of these topics, and that we're not unraveling the complexity. If we don't do that, if we don't start doing that, then we will never get to a truly successful transformation. That's what we're saying. And we think that we know what the missing link is. Right.
Yep, we do. So let's unravel it a bit. So the first two, let's say, overarching things I want to address here from a behavioral science perspective is the performance view. Does anybody know what the performance view is, by the way? No? Okay, then something new will coming at you. The performance view, we use that in behavioral science, is that person that actually shows the behavior. Now, that sounds logical, I hope, but it's actually quite hard to do so. Because in our minds, we like to assess a situation and have a thought about that, right? We want to judge that situation. Yeah, so it's really hard to do. It sits in our brain here in the back. That's what we do as human beings. So the performer, shifting your focus to that performer view, like I did in the robot situation, that's the first overarching component of behavioral science. And the second is we want to try, Evelyn mentioned before, we want to try and change people's environment. We're not here to change people, I hope. We're trying to change their environment in order for them to wanting to change their behavior. Well, that sounds a little bit complex, and it is, but we'll get to it. But these two factors or components of behavioral science are really important. So, we want to address three things from behavioral science, which is just a minority, but this is the first one. We want you to learn to specify behavior. Yeah, so we already said we want to get rid of all the things that we might think it means, but we want to really get down into specifying behavior, as we call it. So really, it's about, hey, what do we see a person do, or what do we hear a person say? That's observable behavior. Being open, transparent, or insert catchy phrase in agile situations are good. Again, I'm not that grumpy old man. Are very good, but you need to go deeper. So what does a person do, or leader, when he needs to be more open? What can we see him do? That's the question, and that's specifying behavior, a better understanding of what we actually mean. So that's the first one. The second is the ABC contingency model, and bear with me again, this is a little bit of theory, yeah, but I like it, but let's go. So why we want to really grasp on the question, why does behavior occur? And the ABC model is the thing that can help you to answer this question. So the ABC model consists of ABC, not that hard, three components. In the middle you see behavior, specified behavior, observable behavior. You will start with this one. So you're going to write down what are the observable behavior or behaviors. And then the A stands for antecedent, or a much easier word I like to use is a trigger. When behavior occurs, there's always a trigger. That could be an intrinsic trigger, feeling, thought, emotion, etc. Things that we cannot see. They are there, we know, but we cannot see them. There are also external triggers. Phone beeping, a conversation within a team, so other people talking is also an external trigger. A sign, hand gestures, there are all different kinds of triggers that all happen before the behavior of the performer actually takes place. We're going to write them down. What happens before the actual behavior takes place? And then, if we do that, we're going to take a look at the consequence. So every behavior of a person, of the performer, has a consequence. And the thing about the consequence is that this is the most key thing, maybe of the whole talk, but okay, for now, for this sheet, the key is the consequence. We as human beings, and we know this for a long time already, but future behavior is mainly dependent on the consequences of our current behavior. And I'm going to let that sink in for just a moment. So if a person shows behavior and the consequence of the behavior is either good for them or bad, that is the key. If it's good, it's very likely that the behavior will occur in the future again. If the consequence is bad, in the most simplest form, it decreases that probability. So the ABC contingency model plays around with that concept. It gives you new insights on where the trigger comes from, what are the triggers, and what's holding this behavior in place, or will it occur in the future again? Consequences. Yeah? Okay, last one. Then we go into the practical things. Last theoretic, behavior and results. Behavior, when we talk about behavior change, we need to link it to the result. And not alone that, also within a specific context, which is very hard. Because when you're going to write down what the organizational context is, you have to start thinking, hey, what do we want to achieve with who? So you can think of, is it a team? Is it an individual? Where does this individual is in contact with? Does it have dependencies with anyone? Which tools do they use? Which way of work is expected from him or her or which team? What's the organizational context? Then, if you know that, then within that context, you can ask yourself, what are the results that we're trying to achieve? And again here, be specific. What are the results? So deliver faster is not specific enough. What are you delivering? How fast do you want to go? In what time frame do you want to go faster? And then, and only then, you can start identifying, and with what behaviors do you want to achieve these results? That's the concept of behavioral science number 3, linking the behavior to results, right?
And now you can breathe. Inhale, exhale. So this was a crash course 101 in behavioral science. And it's very valuable, right? Because it's very valuable to know what these 3 main aspects are, right? The specifying behavior and results, the ABC model, and linking results to behavior. This is very valuable knowledge to have, but still. And now what? So this is the part where we actually get into the examples, right? This is not where the silver bullet comes in, managing expectations, but this is where we're going to show you how these behavioral science aspects relate to the examples that we just give. So how do you apply it? The first thing, oh, sorry, I'm going too fast. First thing you need to know is that behavioral change is not about you, at least not always. And knowing when it is about you and when it's not about you, that's a very valuable skill to have. Because it teaches you where you are in this transformation. So what you can do and what your role is in changing the environment of people. Again, we are not changing people. We are not magicians, unfortunately. So we cannot just put a spell on people and they will show the desired behavior all of a sudden. But we are changing environments. And knowing what your role is in there and if it's about you or not, that's very valuable. It's really not about me? No, well, yes and no. It depends. I'm a consultant, so this is still my go-to answer. But of course it starts with you, right? If you want to change something, if there is a change needed, then of course it starts with you, because you will need to change something as well. But the thing that you need to remember here, and Chris already mentioned it, is that it's always about the person showing the behavior. It's always about the one performing the behavior. It's not about you, it's what is a positive consequence for the person showing the behavior. If you remember anything from this talk, remember that. And I'm going to illustrate that with an example. Yes. Rewarding people. That all makes us feel good, right? Celebrating success makes us feel good. So imagine that you are in a team and there is a new project coming in, a new assignment came in, and it's a lot of exciting new work that you all really want to work on, but it was quite a struggle to get this assignment in. And it mainly got in because of the help of one of the consultants in the team. She helped a lot with the sales part of it. And eventually the assignment came in. So as a team manager, what you decide, in our next team session, we're going to celebrate the success. I'm going to put this person in the spotlight, celebrate it, there's cake, there's champagne, it's a very lovely afternoon. And then after a few weeks or after a few months, a new opportunity presents itself. And you go to that person again and ask, hey, can you help me again? Because we need the sales skills that you have. It would be very valuable. And she says, no, I'm not helping you. That's weird. So what happened there is, for this person, being put in the spotlight felt as punishment. She really doesn't like to be in the spotlight. So what happened there in that celebration session, you were thinking, hey, I'm rewarding that person, I'm celebrating, it's a great afternoon, success everywhere. But actually you were punishing that person. And punishing stops behavior, because it's not a very positive consequence. So what you can learn from the story is that it's always about the person showing the behavior. You might think you are adding positive consequences, but you need to check that with the person. That's also why behavioral change is about you, because it's up to you to figure out what these positive consequences are. And that's hard. So back to our stars, right? We're gonna walk through a few of these actors and see how these behavioral science aspects apply to them. And we're gonna start with resistance. And as said, resistance is a bulk concept. We can fit a lot into that. So if we want to analyze why certain behavior is there, why certain resistant behavior is there, we first need to specify what the behavior is that we want to analyze. And that's already a hard thing to do. But if you have that, if you specify behavior, you can use the ABC model that Chris explained. So imagine this story. Once upon a time, there was a new process introduced, and that would make all of our lives easier. So most of you, or some of you, I don't know, actually this is an assumption, are using Jira. And this is a real story, by the way. It's anonymized. But there was this company, this team, and they were using Jira for managing their epics and features in this case. They were using Jira for that, but they were using their stand-ups and Slack for their stories and their subtasks, because it was way easier, and the async way of working worked way better for them. Everyone understood it, there was an agreement, it worked well, everybody was happy. And then management came in and said, well, from now on, we want you to update your stories and subtasks in Jira as well, because we want to keep track of what's happening there. And that sounds like a lot of extra work, because you have a perfectly working process, and now they want you to do something else. And it's only going to cost you extra time, and your agenda is already very full, and you're very busy. So that's not what you want to do. So what happens? People are not updating stories and subtasks within Jira. That's behavior that you can analyze. It's undesired behavior that you can analyze using the ABC model. So we did this exercise. So usually you do this with the people involved, just to say that. So the behavior is in the middle, not updating subtasks in stories in Jira. What we did, we listed a couple of antecedents or triggers on the left, and on the right, there are the consequences. So there could be tons of triggers here. And there's more. This is just what we came up with, and the same goes for the consequences. So they are from all perspectives, right? There's no judgment in here. This is just what we observe. This is what we want to do. So having this insight is already very valuable. But you want to do more, right? Because eventually you want to change behavior. You want to change the environment that people are operating in. So what are you going to do next? Well, you can do an ABC analysis. And an ABC analysis means that you are, amongst others, going to analyze the consequences, because not all consequences are equally powerful. And what you do with an ABC analysis and a consequence analysis, you can see, okay, so which of these consequences is most powerful? And if you know that, you can use that to change your environment. Because in this example, time saved, okay, going back, time saved was actually the most powerful consequence. So your next question is, what can I change to the environment that actually causes that updating subtasks in Jira saves time? Because that's what you want. So what can you change in the environment that is actually saving you time to update your subtasks in Jira instead of your Slack and your stand-up? And that probably means that you need to do a change in the process or the tool or whatever, not a change in people. And that's how you can use, very briefly, how you can use this model to analyze that behavior. Next one.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, because...
Did we get in trouble?
No,
okay.
Not yet, but... let's see. Leadership. So...
We can do one.
Yeah, we can do one. So this actor, the leader, So we want to get rid of all the fuzziness, right? So one of the most easiest thing is by doing this is specifying behavior, of course, and we do this by the show me test. So this is an exercise I do a lot with leadership teams. So when we want to empower people, or a leader needs to empower their people, the one question you need to ask yourself, show me. Show me what will you do, what do you need to do to empower your people. And that can be multiple behaviors, right? And try to describe them in actual observable behavior. Show me test. Very simple, very, very productive thing to do. I'm gonna cheat, I'm going to do it, still do it. Because this one is my favorite. So the agile mindset, right? Agile mindset, I really like the construct of having a mindset, of course, don't get me wrong. And when we add behavior to the mix, you can really have a great advantage. So you're just going to fill in the cloud that we've made for you, right? So you're going to think of, hey, what is the organizational context? So that could be, let's say, a Scrum team. Scrum team working in a value stream with 8 other Scrum teams. All dependencies with each other, lots of variety in stakeholders, lots of pressure. That's the context that they're in, right? And maybe one of the results that they want to one of the results that they want to achieve is they want, within 24 hours, they want to update their system when anything happens. And they want to update the system towards the client, so the clients are being helped. So maybe that's a result that they want to achieve. Then you can think with this Scrum team, with what behavior are you going to achieve this? So it's a very simple, let's say a template or exercise to do to really specify not only the behavior, but the organizational context and the results linking that, those 3 together. Yeah, so very, very powerful thing to do. So this is the part where you take notes. So what did we actually say? What do you want to grasp on from this talk? Start unraveling the complexity. We know behavioral change, behavioral science is complex. Start acting like it's complex. Start reading up on it, start understanding what is it, how does it work. Yeah, that's the first one. Shall I click?
Yeah, click. I can click, I'm closer to the thing. Yes. So recognize when you're oversimplifying complexity, right? When you're putting stuff into the container, when you're making a big bulk out of something, where you're ignoring something because you feel it's too complex, recognize when you're doing that. Very valuable skill to have. Third one.
Trigger the desired behavior. So you need to figure out what are the triggers that that you can add to the environment for this person in order to trigger the behavior. And you need to first trigger that behavior and then look at the consequence. So if you have triggered the right behavior, you need to think about, hey, how can we make this positive for this person so he or she will show this behavior again in the future? Yeah?
Next thing, well, you're not changing people, you're changing the environment. Hopefully that came across in this session as well. And
yeah, mostly the most important one, I think. So behavioral change is not about you. It's about the performer. It's about their environment, how they perceive the world, not yours.
And at the same time, like I mentioned, it is all about you because it starts with you. You will need to do something. You will need to initiate something. Start with the techniques that we showed you very briefly. So it also is about you, but you have to know when it is and when it's not. So that brings us to the last slide. We've summed it up for you. So if there are, I'm not sure if there's time for questions. If there are, please go ahead, and otherwise we'll be available during the break. Thank you for now.
Or not. I think we'd be quite happy to take 1 or 2 if you have them. Otherwise, find the folks out at the break. We'll break for about 10 minutes, no more, please, and come back down for the next session. Thank you all.
Perfect.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Great presentation. Thank you.